Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
Hello and welcome to this bonus episode of Farming Focus, the podcast for Southwest farmers, proudly brought to you by Cornish Mutual. I'm your host, Peter Green. Today we're taking a closer look at something that often makes all the difference: building strong relationships between farmers, butchers, chefs and other buyers. I'm joined again by Phil Warren from Phillip Warren Butchers and Matt Chatfield from the Cornwall Project. Together we'll be sharing some practical advice on how farmers can create lasting partnerships that help their businesses to really grow and thrive. Phil, I'll come to you first. From the butcher's side, what do you look for in a farmer that you're wanting to sort of work with in the long term?
Obviously, when I get there, it's looking at the stock, really. But you soon know, if you're a farmer yourself, those are giving you all the talk and not walking the walk. Most of the farmers I know love their ground and love their animals. And it upsets me at times when people say about, oh, farmers don't care. Farmers don't. They do. They really, really care. And I feel sometimes that gets a bit lost because everybody's looking for the hooks. The hooks here. British farmers and British beef is some of the best in the world. And we need to keep talking about British farmers and British beef and British meat. It's very easy to have all these little things sidetracks, but we undersell ourselves, if I'm honest with you.
So talking about the story and how much we care. So Matt, coming to you, how important do you think that story is, especially when it comes to building relationships with chefs or restaurants? And what are they looking for?
Well, also, I originally went to London, was introducing Phillip Warren meat to chefs, and they invariably then have to sell it to their customers. A story is absolutely and utterly vital for both, but it has to be true. You cannot be based on. So you need a story, but it has to be true. Two sort of examples. We're in Cornwall. Chefs are coming down here all the time on holiday, and we're getting phone calls saying, can I pop in and say, see what you're up to? So at any time they could pop into the Warren shop, they could go into the cutting plant, they can come to my farm. So you just have to be absolutely honest in what you're doing. The other point is just a bit of a story. And so the reason in London, I sold fish, this fish was super high quality, and I was trying to sell meat. Chefs are just a lot more loyal to butchers than they are to fish. So it took us about 2 years before we started getting strong. And the reason it got strong was a chap called Tom Adams. He started a restaurant called Pig Q, and it was the first time London just went absolutely crazy with street food. He had like a street food place down on the embankment. He then turned it into a restaurant. He then asked to meet us. And where we got very good was a lot of chefs went abroad. Used to have the big sort of Marco Whites and those type of people, but there are a group of chefs, about 6 of them, that went and worked at Noma, worked around the world, really experienced native beef where they were. And when they all came out to London, they all started restaurants at the same time, including Tom, and they basically wanted to be able to meet the farmer, meet the butcher, and realise their animal was all native. And that we just hit it at the right time in the right place. So Tom Adams was the first one who came down. He was probably about 22 at the time, and he wanted to meet Phil, he wanted to meet Ian Warren, he wanted to meet the farmers, because everything was saying was true. It just worked. And it was just so that just showed what you need to do. What's quite interesting then is Tom Adams came on that trip. He now actually lives and farms and has a restaurant about 3 miles from where we are. So he enjoyed it so much, he's now actually come here and he sort of actually farms. It's now called Coomsaid. It's a fantastic place. So that's quite a nice little story, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's making sure that there's truth in the story. It's really interesting what you say. I spoke to...
Also, during the break, Philip did say, we actually have a quick break, but all that really matters really is what it is on the plate. So it has to taste fantastic.
So what are the biggest mistakes that farmers make when trying to sell their product direct to buyers? Phil, you touched on it in the main episode last week, but what do you think that people where do they fall short and where could they improve?
To follow the line of absolute quality, if you see, years ago, I always remember I had a heifer come in. Well, if you kill a heifer that's come in bulling, when it dies, it'll die dark and sticky, because obviously the pH has changed. And I said to the farmer, I said, well, you knew it was bulling. Why did you send it? He said, well, he's coming up to 30 months, although he have to go. And I explained to him, that's fine. For you, that's one heifer gone. For me, that's 150 to 200 customers that are going to be really cheesed off. But because obviously we burger it or do something else with it. And that is the principle. The farmers have to understand why they're doing it. They are doing it to produce something that the person buying it is going to really enjoy and eating. Not because they think it's the best product, not because of any other reason. It's got to be about the eating quality of that product. Whether they can make it pay is slightly different because it's not easy, is it? You know, the cost of slaughter now and the hanging and whatever, and the lack of skills now through the trade. I mean, we're lucky. There's 100 and odd of us here. We train all our own. We've got 10 apprentices going at a time. We still use a 5-year apprenticeship, same as I had, indentured, and do everything properly. Well, of course, most people can't do that. You know, we've been doing it for years. So it's not easy for them, but they can make their life better if the one thing they consider about at the end of the day, yeah, have the story, have the pictures, have whatever, but ensure that that product is at its finest peak.
I'm interested to hear about the extent to which you can get feedback and work with customers to accommodate requests. We heard a little bit about it in the main episode, but actually, to what extent can you take the different requests on board?
You don't get too much feedback unless there's a problem. If I'm honest with you, I've always taught my son the most important thing for me has always been with our retail business is customer numbers. You will soon know if things aren't right. That number just drops off. They'll come back around and whatever. But all the time we're looking at our customer numbers for retail. And like I said, dealing with the chefs, the biggest problem with a lot of the chefs is they've got not employers, but perhaps the people in a group, because a lot of the restaurants in London are owned by groups. Are they allowed the freedom to do things? Because, you know, they're being pulverized at the moment with national insurance, pulverized with all these rates and the rents in London. You would think they'd be coming back, but they're not. They're going up. They've got massive problems, and that's why I keep talking about the 50p. Irrespective of where the price point is, 50p makes a difference between. And this brings me in another thing. They want to sell a 6-ounce steak, whereas it used to be, say, an 8-ounce. And we agree with this. Eat less meat, eat it better. The thing is, they still want it the same thickness. So a lot of farmers don't get this because I was a big seller of South Devon beef over the years because obviously South Devon's had Guernsey within them, so it was a better eating quality product. They followed the EBBs, brilliant cattle, wonderful muscle, but we created a ribeye steak that nearly has to be sliced on a machine to get it thin enough to get it within the 6 ounces. People don't eat the 10-ounce steaks anymore. People had 10 or 7 to 8, and the restaurants are on 6. And we went on Radio Cornwall years ago, and I said we want people to eat less meat. And I think Lawrence, whatever he was called, nearly fell off his chair. The butcher was saying eat less meat, but it is the only way forward. We need to eat less meat and pay the same price. So we say to the chef, we want you to pay us for a 6-ounce steak the same as you used to pay us for an 8-ounce steak. We will pass part of that back to the farmer as a premium.
Yeah.
But that is the only way we can survive. And it's work. It's work.
Yeah.
And
so you're needing a smaller animal to make sure that
you need a longer animal. You know, when the South Devons were 500 kilos dead, they were long. And you had long sirloins. What they've done is they created a more muscly, neater animal. I'm not knocking South Devons, honestly, because they're a wonderful breed. But they've got to understand in their size issues, where does that leave the quality end of the market? It's not that the quality of the beef is wrong. It's the fact we cannot cut a 6-ounce steak.
Yeah.
And some of my best friends are South Down farmers, and I hope they understand where I'm coming from because they got an amazing breed. I mean, from a farmer's point of view, they can get a 400 kilo carcass at 21 months.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that's a lot better than saying to somebody they got a carcass at 21 months. It's 279 kilos, isn't it?
Can I just come back to you on that piece around eating less meat? Because I think I understand what you're saying, but could you just sort of unpack why that might be the case for those of our listeners who maybe were wondering why you might say that?
Well, partly I think it fits the profile of what we're doing to nature carbon and all things like that. But it's also a case of, I think, if you can do that, you can actually nearly make money again, so that you can get the same price for producing less, going back to the farmer.
Okay.
If they'll pay us for a 6 ounce instead of a 10 ounce or an 8 ounce or 9 ounce or whatever, that money can be passed back to the farmer, which somewhat equates between the big and small. It's a personal thing I've done for years. I've said it for 30 years. We do need to eat less meat, but eat it better. This pile, oh, do you remember, I don't know if you remember years ago, there was a sheep advert that the Meat and Livestock Commission did was slam in the lamb. And it was just about chucking a bit of lamb in the oven or whatever. And I said, that was the biggest detriment to us. We're trying to promote lamb as a high quality product, because, it's hard to make money out of a carcass, because there's a lot of money for what you get. And of course, everybody wants the loin and that lot. Very few people want the breast. But the good thing about Matt in London is he's actually got chefs buying the breast of lamb and using that as a premium product. If I went back 30 years ago and somebody's buying brisket, they were looked upon as the poor.
Yeah.
That they couldn't afford anything better.
Yeah.
The chefs have turned it around and made it look as a premium product. That's why the chefs have been good. They've been the best thing for the farmer ever, because they've taken the carcass, looked at it in a sensible way, and created premium products out of something that it was in the mince, it was in the pasties.
And it comes back to that story again, and this time it's the chefs who are taking it on. So finally, gents, what's one simple piece of advice that you would give to any farmer who wants to build stronger, maybe more personal relationships with their market?
Well, it feels like a cheap personally, really, because also I approached Phil 15 years ago, and that's sort of been the making of me, really. When I first started in London, the real first bit of advice, more on terms, we don't really mind who you supply, but then just make sure they pay on time. That was quite important. And when I first went to London, I did a special roast dinner. I got a chef called Alan Williams to cook a roast dinner, and Jack Stein turned up, I've never met Jack, son of Rick. Got on very well over a few drinks. Had quite a lively evening. I then got a phone call about a month later saying, "No, I'm coming back to Cornwall. We've actually we're doing a taste test. We've asked all the best butchers in the country to see if they want to supply to the Stein restaurants." Then by then, I think they were being supplied by someone up north. He said, "I'm going to be passing warrants quite soon. Do you think there's any chance you can add to it?" So I phoned up him one. He just went to the shelf, picked up what was a normal bit of meat that we basically could guarantee, gave it to them. Didn't think much more of it. And then about 2 weeks later, Jack said, "You've actually won. We'd like you to supply us now." So what that was really important was, when the restaurant opens, they get samples from everyone. Everyone sends in their very best. We've always sent what we can guarantee. Sometimes they'll launch with you, but other times they won't. But then quite often, about a month later, you'll get a phone call saying, "We've actually been a bit let down. The quality's not quite good with the people we've got. Are you able to actually supply?" So the lesson there is, always probably deliver what you promise you can do. And I think
consistency,
that's a valuable lesson. Yeah. So don't give your best, just do what you can guarantee. So
yeah, that's about the best. Like I said, don't sell anything to anybody that isn't right, which is very difficult for somebody who just killed one bullock and it isn't right. And that's why I honestly think you need to work with people that you can trust, people that if they're going to give you a premium, you're going to get the premium. And that's what we've done with I've got a band of 120, 30 farmers, and I've trained them to start picking their own cattle, because they were picking the wrong thing to start with. And if you find the right person to work with, there's a good future for it. I'm a brilliant butcher. I don't mind saying it myself. I think I'm a quite good farmer, but I'm not as good as my son-in-law, who's a Bob and Moore farmer, brought up right through it. He's a better farmer than me. Now, just because you're a farmer doesn't make you the best person at understanding meat. And I've got butchers working for me for several years who still don't understand meat. They understand cutting out meat. They don't understand meat. It's a bit like me with the farming. Horses for courses.
And on that, we'll leave it. Thank you so much to you, Phil and Matt. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
Thanks for joining us.
Cornish Mutual, farming insurance experts.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode of Farming Focus. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss any episodes in the series.